Okay, so this is going to be for those of you who were missing a day or two when we went through the human genetics notes. I know some of you guys that missed these classes like that when I go ahead and do this, so I'm going to go ahead and do this for you. When we first started talking, Friday we watched the video and it talked a lot about Tay-Sachs disease, but it also talked something about the Human Genome Project. And so my opening question in this human genetics notes is, what do you think a genome is? And do you think every organism has a genome? So I want you to pause the video, take a couple of seconds, come back and write down what you think a genome is and if you think every organism has a genome. Okay, so you should have paused and you should have taken some time there. Well, genome, from probably what you remember from the video, go ahead and says that a genome is the collection of all of the genes of a species. Okay, so for humans, we can say that the genome or the human genome is all of the genes that is possible for humans. Okay, the Human Genome Project was when scientists were studying to try to figure out every single gene that human beings have in order to help better treat diseases or in order to cure diseases or anything like that. That's what we wanted to know. If we knew the genes, we could figure out maybe how to manipulate those genes to be able to get us what we want. Do you think every organism has a genome? Of course. Every organism has a genome. Every organism has its own set of genes. Okay? Here is our breakdown now. Okay? In every human cell, there is, of course, one nucleus. In every nucleus, there are, of course, 46 chromosomes. On those chromosomes, there are approximately 25,000 genes, and those genes are composed of 3 billion base pairs, and the 3 billion base pairs influence the endless amount of human proteins that make our bodies. Okay, the 3 million of those base pairs are the only difference between one human and another. Okay, that means that the human beings are essentially 99.9% the same. And we had already talked about that, the fact that human beings, you look to your left, you look to your right, doesn't matter who you're looking at somebody that's essentially 99.9% the exact same as you. And so when we look at this, we look at similarities in DNA between you and other organisms. So I just put this picture of babies. These pictures are all really cute. The chimpanzee, the banana's awfully cute. But when we look at these babies, they're adorable, but we know that they are the same as every other human, 99.9% the same. Chimpanzees, although still very similar, are 98.6% the same. And that's crazy to me that something, you look at that chimpanzee and you look at these awfully cute babies, to think that they're 98.6% the exact same is absolutely crazy to me. Okay, and the other thing that is crazy to me is that us and bananas. Okay, bananas, the thing that you eat for breakfast in the morning, the thing that's full of potassium, it's yellow, it hangs from trees. Okay, bananas, you are roughly 50% the same as a banana. And that is crazy to me, that you can possibly look at a banana and think that you are 50% exactly the same. Now I want you to think about that. I want you to think about how does that even work? How can you possibly be 50% the same as a banana? Well, when you actually think about it and you think about all the different cellular processes that have to go on, your body needs to know how to make new cells, how to replicate DNA, what functions the cell should do, the structures that make up the cells, the outside part of the cells, exactly how to make proteins that make up the cells. All of that stuff happens in both you and bananas, because bananas are made out of cells too. So all of that basic cellular process material, that all comes from DNA, and that's why we have 50% the same between us. The human genome is very complex, and the traits are usually determined by more than one set of genes. Okay, so it's not like there's one eye color trait, and it's not like there's one hair color trait. It's usually controlled by more than that. Genes are turned on and off, which is why a liver cell is different from a heart cell. Okay, so when in development and when you are, or when babies are first starting to develop and they go through different parts develop at different times. So maybe, certain genes get turned on and all of a sudden the heart cells start to develop. And then the heart cells switch off and all of a sudden the liver cells switch on and start to develop. It's kind of like a light switch. You can think about it another way by thinking about somebody that is older that no longer has hair color. Okay, when they no longer have hair color, the reason is because the gene that produces the proteins for those hairs has been switched off. So those proteins are no longer being made because the genes are no longer switched on, and so therefore hair color doesn't exist for them anymore. They have gray hair. Sometimes their genes are influenced by something other than just being turned on or off. Our genes can be affected by the environment. Okay, and that's what brings us to this part. Genetics versus the environment. Do we think that there's a relationship? Yes, we know that there's. Yes, of course. And we know this because the other day we even talked about ultraviolet radiation. Okay, ultraviolet radiation led us to know that the environment or the sun, okay, UV rays coming down from the sun had affected our DNA. It caused mutations. So yeah, it does have some sort of an effect on traits and genes. And epigenetics, in a very basic sense, it is the effect of the environment on genetics. Okay, in a very basic way. And sometimes we use twins to really look at epigenetics. And the reason we use twins is because they allow us to look at something that is exactly the same and change something like the environment and see how one responds to this condition and one how responds to this condition. So there are two types. We have identical and we have fraternal. Okay, and we look at the diagram. Okay, in the diagram, identify which is identical and which is fraternal. Okay, and the ones that come from the same sperm and egg and then split, these guys are identical. Okay, and it's because they have the same set of DNA, it just split. Okay, that egg, once it was fertilized, just split into two, and then those cells continue to develop. The fraternal ones are two separate eggs and two separate sperm. Okay, so they have their own makeup of DNA. It's not the same DNA at all. They're essentially exactly the same as if they were two different siblings. They just happen to be born at the same time. It's just when two eggs are released instead of that one. If you remember meiosis, and we talked about how we get one egg and three polar bodies or three other eggs that are kind of, they die off or they're discarded. In this case, we get two, and that's how we get fraternal twins. How are they different? I just kind of explained that. Identical, they have the same DNA, and fraternal, they have different DNA. Why are twins so helpful in determining how the environment and genes? Well, we just kind of talked about that one too. We had said that the reason that they're so great is because they have the same genetic makeup. Identical twins have the same genetic makeup, but if we put them in different environmental conditions, we can see how those environmental conditions affect the twins. Okay, and the graph. And I forgot that I did not, that graph just didn't show up for me. And so I am going to locate that really quickly. Let's see, where would that graph be? I got to go back through some of my notes here really quickly. Okay. Let's see, third 9 weeks, and we're going to go into human genetics, human genetics notes. And if you see, I'll just leave it right up on this. We scroll down, and if we look at this graph, now this graph didn't get interpreted the way I want, but the question is, we look at this graph, and what does this graph tell us about epigenetics? And what I find really interesting about this, what I find really interesting about this graph is you can tell that up here we're looking at different traits of twins, and we can see that the lighter bars are identical and the darker bars are fraternal. And we can see that certain traits are more likely to be experienced by the pairs of twins. Okay, so this is saying that percentage of twins who share the trait. So height, we're saying that probably somewhere around 90% of identical twins share the same height. Probably somewhere around 60% of fraternal twins share the same height. Now, what I found really interesting about this is that if we have identical twins and they have the same DNA, why is it that not 100% of the twins are receiving the same height? Why is that changing? And the reasoning behind that is because of epigenetics. Okay, the reasoning behind that is absolutely 100% behind epigenetics. The fact that DNA is influenced by environment. Okay, hopefully that will get you to genetics test number 2, which, don't forget, genetics test number 2 is taking place on Thursday, and I will see you guys tomorrow.